The reason I'm thinking right now is that the concept of culture itself, organizational culture, is as many stuff in organizational behavior, is also a very complex one because you have many types of cultures even within an organization. My name is Antoine Devinat. I'm an industrial psychologist, and the name of my firm is ADN Leadership. And I basically work with large, medium, small companies in different HR issues that they may have. Um, the reason I'm thinking right now is that the concept of culture itself, organizational culture, is as many stuff in organizational behavior, is also a very complex one because you have many types of cultures even within an organization. For example, you could have a subculture in the within the financial unit. You may have a subculture within the sales and marketing unit, a subculture within the IT unit, HR, etc. That's strongly influenced by the leader of that unit. However, normally you should have a overall, I wouldn't say systematic, but coherent culture across the organization that's driven by the executive team and the organization's leader. But that's not, I noticed that that's not always the case. And I can see work dynamics, interactions, organizational climates that are very different from one business unit to another. That being said, the challenge is, and it's a very good question, how do you measure? It's not, an individual doesn't have an organizational culture, but an individual has values. An individual has personality traits, and these characteristics will have an impact on the type of organizational culture that you will find more appealing or more engaging than another. So, for example, if I'm a highly collaborative individual, well, obviously, if collaboration is a strong value within an organization and it's part of their culture, I'll probably feel the fit there is better for me than an organization that's more individualistic in how they're managing their resources. So if I'm super collaborative, I wouldn't fit maybe in the sales team, which are often more individualistic than others, but maybe I will fit more in an HR group where collaboration is a bit more important, or in production, for example, or again, where collaboration can be key. But I would say you can look at some of these characteristics, like in terms of culture, organizational culture, we will look at organizational values. That's the first angle, and that one's a fit. That one's an easy fit because individuals have their own values. An organization can have values. You can see how well these two fit. Again, it's one thing to say these are our values. Is that really what's happening on a day-to-day basis? Sometimes there's a bit different. There are a bit of differences there, but if the organization, in a day-to-day level, the type of values, how they communicate, how they interact with their employees, they do reflect these values. You can look at our values and individual values and see how well the fit there is there. So values is an angle. Hierarchy is another very important aspect of organizational culture that you should consider. Some individuals, in terms of part of their values, is respecting the hierarchy. For some cultures or values, these things are very, very important, and they will find it extremely difficult to work within an organization who's super flat, where you can talk to the CEO tomorrow morning if you want, or bypass the VP of this or the executive VP of that. I won't fit with that. I will be very uncomfortable. So if I take an example of cultures, I myself am half, my father's from France. I worked in France before, and one of the misfits I had myself was I'm more comfortable in an organization that's super flat. In some organization I worked with in France, hierarchy was super important. And it was Monsieur this and Madame la Directrice that, and it was for me, like, what the hell is that? I didn't fit in that type of culture at all. I'm not saying all organizations in France are like that, not at all, but culturally speaking, the concept of hierarchy is more important in the French culture than in Quebec or in Canada. So hierarchy is another angle that I think is important. Is a factor to consider in terms of person-environment fit. Another thing I would probably look at is the need for development. So some employees are just looking for a job. Other employees, or other individuals, or other humans are looking for development, knowledge, acquiring new skills, opportunities, or a bit more career driven. So if I go to work to, I don't know, a mass, a company that mass produces, I don't know, like chicken, for example, and you're on the production line, and the next step, the only other step you have is supervisor, and I don't want to be a manager. So what are my options? I'll be on the production line for the next 15 years. Maybe that is something that's super comfortable for me. I go in, do my job, I leave, I'm a happy camper, tip top. So, but if not, again, that can be a clash in terms of what you're expecting from the organization. Now, so how the work is done, how it's generated, how things are structured, the organization of work per se, is another angle that defines for me organizational culture. So structure, how the work is generated, values, hierarchy. As far as the employee is concerned, in the hiring process, what else should I consider? Maybe, yeah, that could be another angle that's important. Some organizations are a bit more entrepreneurial than others. So the concept of creativity, doing things differently, is something that can be very appealing to some and less to others. And I do believe that that's an angle that should define also our organizational culture per se. So I would consider that angle too, to see and look at personality traits like adaptability, tolerance for ambiguity, creativity levels, for example. I myself am a consultant for the last 25 years. And one of the things that I know I'm very comfortable with, for example, today I came here knowing you were going to ask me questions on HR, but I didn't ask you to give me a list of the questions prior to today. Not because I was thinking I can wing it. I know my stuff. It's my field of expertise, but at the same time, I don't feel the need to have that information up front for me to become comfortable having this type of conversation, but other people could. So if this is an organization where one day it's black, the next day it's white, the next day it's green, and we're constantly sometimes changing priorities or refocusing because we want to be very agile, well, for some personality traits that fits very well, but others not at all. And I do believe that that's another angle that probably defines significantly organizations compared to others. I believe there are probably, and I can talk about it from personal experience because there's an expression in French that says "cordonnier mal chaussé." You know, you're very good at something, but your ability to apply it to yourself is sometimes a bit limited. I was part of building a company in 2002. There were 5 of us. We built it up to 60, 70 employees in the consulting world. That's pretty good in 5 years. There was this other organization that was a bit same size. And so in around 2010, we thought, okay, let's merge. Let's become the biggest consulting firm based in Quebec. And we screwed the pooch. We screwed it up. That did not work at all. The merger went very badly. And 3 years later, we closed the door. The company was gone. Everybody was out of a job. And a lot of the partners, like myself, lost a bit of money in the process. So I know how challenging bringing 2 different cultures to work together can be. So the first angle of response to that would be, what's the culture here and what's the culture there? And there are tools that are available right now that can measure cultures, but I haven't seen any tool yet that's able to see how these 2 cultures will fit. And I believe that that's something that could be interesting to explore, because if you're able to do that, merging or trying to see how well 2 teams that come from 2 different cultures are able to work together. But that's not all. Organizational is part of it. A lot of the different characteristics I was mentioning earlier, of organizational values, how we organize the work, HR practices, these are all concepts that are really need to look at. For example, if you're commission-based salaries and the other one doesn't, again, making these 2 organizations work together can be challenging. If hierarchies here are super important, not there. Again, all these things can be key. But besides that, I do believe you can also do, and it's interesting because a client of mine approached me a few weeks ago with that specific question. They foresee that they'll have a lot of projects where they need to find a team from organization A to be able to work with team from organization B. And how do we make sure that these two teams will be able to work together? And I looked into this very closely. There's not a lot of stuff that's been written on that. A lot of stuff written on an individual joining a team, someone joining an organization, but two teams to work together, not a lot. What I do believe we'll start doing is, first off, assessing team dynamics. So there are models that are interesting. Some of the work by Patrick Lencioni of the 5 dysfunctions of a team is a great approach to look at how does a team work together, and how does this team work together, and are they similar or dissimilar? So that would be, I believe that's another angle I would look at. We talked about organizational culture. Obviously, values would be key here. And would I look at personality traits? Probably. I would probably use, there are 2 major models in psychology. There's the 5-factor theory, and then there's the Jung personality traits or types that exist. And Jung has worked a lot on introvert, extrovert, sensing, feeling, thinking, intuition, judging, perceiving. And you see some tools today that are called Insight or Colors or DISC or NOVA that measure these types of characteristics. And just to give you an example, I've worked at some time with a team of doctors, and the idea was to develop their level of emotional intelligence. I love doctors, I need them, but let's be honest, emotional intelligence isn't necessarily their forte all the time. And we were doing this workshop, and they needed to work together. And one of the doctors was extremely different on the disc and in terms of colors than the other, there were a group of 8. But they didn't understand why. When we used that tool to try to get an idea of the team's portrait, and the person that was very different in her personality traits and types. And she said, okay, now I understand why I'm having so much difficulty working with these kind of, for her, they were creeps. And in their mind, she was the weirdo. Now, one could think if we want 2 teams to work together, the more similar they are, the better. That's not exactly true. In fact, there were studies done by Deloitte, by McKinsey, that have shown that the more diversity you find in a team, the higher the level of the overall performance is. And they've seen numbers like 20, 25, 30% stronger performance versus having a team of individuals that are very, very similar. So if I were to look at trying to find 2 organizations, 2 teams to work together, I would clearly look into this to make sure that there's in fact diversity. If they're similar, it'll be easier to work together, but they'll fail more. So I'd in fact try to focus on variety, diversity, more than similarities in terms of assessing how good of a fit or a good of an idea it is to have these 2 groups of people work together.